So, good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for being back almost in time. We're gonna make it. We have some exciting sessions for this afternoon, probably some of the most important sessions because this is about looking forward. This is about deciding together about what can IDAC do next. And so the title of that session is about renewing the IDAC mission, realizing its vision. And so in order to kick off a discussion, we will have first an introduction from Petra Nermers, from the chair of the advisory board of IDAC, and then you will have some insight from the four working groups before we can follow up with a conversation with all of you. So without further ado, Petra, let me ask you the question that has been prepared for you. What are some of the key and recurrent issues related to data on children on the move that have come up during the conference? Can you briefly also touch upon issues that were not discussed adequately during the conference and that you would advise IDAC to consider going forward?
Okay, thank you very much. I think before I start, I just want to announce that the advisory board meeting we were supposed to have held yesterday will be postponed to be held virtually over the next couple of weeks because we just realized that everyone was going to be too exhausted after the very, very long days that we've been having here. But I also think the discussions over the last few days have been critical to also understanding how the advisory board can best support IDAC's work. Also, if you're not on the advisory board, but you're interested to join, then do reach out to me today and I can let you know how we'll be able to include you. So I have three main points that I think have come up about the work during this conference. I think IDAC does have to be very careful and clear about what we're doing and why, because while there is a lot of demand and we know there's also a lot of need, there's also many different actors involved, and it's easy to fall into kind of the generic and not have a clear niche and distinction as to why we need yet another initiative in this area. So I think there are three main areas that I think we need to consider. First, we need to keep an eye on the prize. And that's how have we managed to get data used to improve the lives of children on the move. Well, I'm going to mix up some metaphors here. First, that it's easy to get caught up in the weeds, and I also do that very easily. But at the same time, weeds are really nothing, just flowers and plants that are unwanted by people. And I just came here from the UK, and I saw there's actually a lot of areas now where they don't weed or mow the grass, but they intentionally leave the area to kind of grow wild. And to mix up the metaphor then of not seeing the wood for the trees, maybe we also need to raise our head up from the weeds and actually appreciate the meadow. And again, to perhaps pushing this metaphor a bit too far, we can see a beautifully manicured lawn and it looks lovely. And then we can see an untended meadow, which looks like a total mess. But the meadow is the one teeming with wildlife and benefiting the ecosystem. So it's important to measure the impact, even if it's messy. And I'm going to continue with this mixing up metaphors theme. If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Or if you improve data and no one uses it, have we improved anything? So we need advocacy. And also to tie up with this point, we need to look at what the barriers to use are. And I think that's come up a lot during this conference, and I think appropriately so. In my work, I've seen that the demand side of data is just as important as the supply. And increasing demand for quality data, as well as working on the supply side, kind of leads to a virtuous cycle where the demand for quality data means that there are more resources available and more interest in the supply of this data. So I think we all know that the areas where there is the greatest need for good data are also the areas where there's actually the least demand. And as an initiative working on an area which can be overlooked, it's incumbent on us to kind of shine a light on those areas and to work to increase that demand. I know most of us, if not all of us, believe deeply in our mission, and bringing yet another metaphor, we're preaching to the choir is always easy, but we also need to persuade others of the utility of our work and to understand and to use it properly. Some of you might know that I used to work at UNHCR, and I remember from my days there when there was a lot of pressure for a single precise number. People didn't like having different numbers and different estimates. And in fact, I was told I mustn't use the word estimate because then it sounds like we don't really know. But, we don't. So what's wrong with that? We have to kind of make that case. And I'm sure many people here have faced similar challenges. So to go back to my metaphor of the untended meadow, we need to demonstrate why actually this messy meadow is preferable to the manicured garden. And as Will said in an earlier panel, how the limitations are often the defining factor of what we do. And I really liked that he put it in that way. We really want the policymakers to actually be suspicious of the manicured garden and appreciate that the untended meadow is the preferable one and sustainable and more reflective of reality. And then to the second point, when we look at the data ecosystem rather than the natural ecosystem, we can see that this is also true. Sorry, I said I was going to push my metaphors. And this comes to, this means we need to take a holistic data ecosystem approach and to appreciate all the components of the messy meadow as a whole. So for those of us who've come from national statistical systems, which is my background before I joined the UN, we do struggle with the messy. We don't like scary things like snowball sampling and key informant interviews. And those who work in humanitarian situations, well, they often struggle with too many rules, too much order. They don't like us bringing up criticisms such as rigor, representativeness, bias. But as an alliance, bringing together stakeholders from across this data ecosystem, this is where our strength lies, which we need to leverage. Everyone brings something to the table, and bringing together all the data and evidence and understanding how they add to the picture and everything contributes is key. And we've often heard about the humanitarian development nexus, and I think this is really putting that concept into practice using humanitarian data and broader development statistics as a whole. And it's become all the more important as non-traditional data sources are being increasingly used. And it's not something that official statisticians can ignore, however uncomfortable it might make us feel. So for example, we have the traditional census, and it's great to include questions on migration, and we can all be very comfortable doing that. But we know it's not enough to fully capture all the populations. And this was discussed in the first panel this morning. So maybe to supplement the census, ideally also fully integrated with it, we can use non-traditional data to capture those populations we know are less likely to be included, such as people who are living outside of households. And of course, AI is the next disruptor coming up with both challenges and opportunities, and we need to look forward to take advantage of them. So we've seen in this meeting with presentations from across the board, from people working with humanitarian response, youth advocates, child protection specialists, statisticians from NSOs, and various line ministries. And we even have a working group focused on innovation. And this is our strength and our value added compared with many other initiatives and agencies working in this area. And I believe we need to make sure we fully exploit it. And third point is that, as I've said, we're working in a space which is broad and has many actors. So this is a challenge in identifying the niche, but it's also an advantage. We're an alliance and we're all working on different initiatives. From my own work in statistics at ESCAP, which is the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, so a regional organization, we're involved in the expert group on migration statistics, EGRIS, the expert group on disaster statistics, the Asia Pacific Civil Registration of Vital Statistics Partnership, the Data Integration Community of Practice, and we have country level work on many of these areas in disaster, gender, data integration, census, and CRVS. So I think, this is just from one organization, but much of this work could potentially benefit from further interventions to help for children on the move to improve the data and statistics. We don't need to invent things from scratch. So, for example, some of the country level work proposed in the IDAC plan is in Indonesia, one of the countries in our region where we've had many interventions in different areas. And we could leverage this work to support the proposed IDAC intervention. As our colleague from Nigeria said yesterday, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. IDAC is small, resources are limited, so we need to make sure we're linking up with existing partnerships and initiatives and carving out from that the focus on children on the move. I think that's the way really to leverage the alliance and create synergies to get the maximum from the pretty limited resources. So it's exciting that IDAC secured funding to take the work forward, and I congratulate them on managing to do that. And as we look forward to the next few years, just to reiterate the 3 points that I've made that I think, should have come out for me from this conference, and, looking forward to the work ahead. One, to keep a focus on getting the data and evidence used to benefit the children on the move, and to focus on this advocacy and communication to do that. Two, to leverage the added value of the alliance through a holistic data ecosystem approach involving all stakeholders. And three, to exploit all the relevant existing partnerships, initiatives, and interventions in migration, statistics, child protection to maximize impact. With that, I'm really looking forward to working with IDAC over the next few years, in my case as a regional entity in Asia and the Pacific, to implement this exciting agenda. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Petra. I like the image of meadow versus manicure garden. I won't go into whether a French or English garden is better discussion, but maybe we have different views on that. No, I think it's very important what you said, this positive message. It's not about glass half or full or empty. It's really about what we're trying to do together, and you ended on that, this need to really build partnership, and I think this is all what IDAC is about. So thank you very much for a positive message, for the energy, for the support, also as the chair of the advisory group of advisory board, of IDAC. Let's now move to the 4 working groups, and I'll start with Apostolos. No, not Apostolos. With Kyriaki Kalimeri, was kindly accepted to step in for Apostolos. She's from UNICEF, and she'll try to respond to the 3 questions that we have prepared for the first working group, that is focusing on capacity strengthening, and as a follow-up to the previous intervention, I think capacity strengthening is absolutely key here. So here are the 3 questions. What are the specific areas you think countries, international organizations, and civil society together have data capacity gaps, and what is need to strengthen their capacity? Second, when can the manual, and I hope most of you have attended the World Cafe table where we're discussing the manual yesterday, how can the manual be of support in the areas you will mention? And finally, what support can Working Group 1 provide to IDAC members to address this gap, strengthening data strengthening needs? Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to say that Apostolos is very sorry. He had to catch his flight, and he's very sorry not to be here. I will try to represent him as best way possible, but I am just a data point in the new digital census, so I will be reading a little bit through the answers. So the first point that you made on data capacity, and what is the best way to strengthen it, is the main points that he highlighted is the data harmonization. So what is happening right now is the data is very fragmented. Many different organizations are gathering data, but they don't have a common way to gather them. So it's really difficult. There are many inconsistencies, duplications, and gaps. And countries and organizations need to harmonize the definitions, classifications, and reference periods to be able to integrate data from different sources. Another point that he mentioned is the legal framework, and sometimes we are talking about sensitive data, we're talking about refugees, so there is the need of a robust legal basis to facilitate the systematic collection and use of data for children on the move. there need to be a clear agreement between data providers, such as border control, health and education agencies, and national statistical offices to overcome fragmented approaches. Another point is the communication. So fragmented data systems, they lack technical infrastructure, and sometimes agencies are collecting data that are duplicated, or there are no tools to record linkage, which is essential to integrate data from various sources. Finally, there is the need of cross-sector collaboration between national governments, international organizations, and civil society. And this will strengthen both the data collection, but also the communication, formalizing partnerships, and supporting by sufficient funding and capacity building. How the manual is going to help these approaches? Well, it offers a guideline to harmonize definition, methodologies, and classifications. And this hopefully will help to improve the quality of disaggregated data. And it will be helpful to discuss the approaches to handle the data quality issues, such as missing data and biases. Finally, it provides a legal framework that can be used to establish a robust legal basis for data collection, highlighting the importance of confidentiality and privacy safeguard. Finally, a very good contribution to the manual is that it offers the best practices that different countries have offered, and I would add that it can also help highlight problems that different countries have, so that it can support capacity building between statistical and administrative agencies, but also NGOs, and help everyone speak a common language. The final point you made was about how the working group 1 can help, can provide support to the IDAC members. And this can be through training programs and workshops, so that the specific needs of the members can be addressed. This can help to have common practices, data sharing agreements, increase the statistical and then also data collection, digital literacy among stakeholders. While it can be it can assist also with advocacy materials, emphasizing the importance of accurate, disaggregated data in design effective policies. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ayaki. I think that's really wonderful substitute to Apostolos. You did a really great job in conveying the key message here. I think I will keep from your intervention the plea for members, IDAC members, to reach out to Working Group 1. If you have needs, they can support you, they can organize training. I think the manual is a great tool and can be also disseminated in your countries. So if you want to organize a seminar, a presentation, a discussion around the manual in your country, don't hesitate. Working Group 1 is here to support, and that's part of the also contribution of IDAC to build together the capacity. Let's now move to Working Group 2, where there are two speakers that will talk about child-specific indicators. And I will start with you, Karima Belhadj. Deux questions. What do you think this guideline is needed at this point in time, and how can stakeholders get involved? Qu'est-ce que vous pensez qu'il est nécessaire en termes de, disons, d'orientation par rapport à ces indicateurs, et quel doit être le rôle des différentes parties prenantes?
D'accord, merci. I will speak in French, so maybe I give you Okay. So, oui, donc tout d'abord, juste pour un peu récapituler, l'objectif de ce guideline, c'est d'avoir un minimum liste d'indicateurs pertinents à la question des enfants en mouvement. Donc, nous avons essayé de développer une liste d'indicateurs qui va au-delà de la désagrégation par âge, qui puisse avoir des indicateurs qui puissent apporter des réponses pour les actions que nous voulons mener pour cette catégorie vulnérable de population. Donc, pourquoi ce guideline est essentiel? Je vais répondre à cette question en étant du point de vue de statisticienne qui travaille dans un bureau de statistique nationale. Quand on est amené à réaliser, par exemple, une opération statistique, que ce soit une enquête ou un recensement, sur toutes les phases de la production d'une donnée ou une statistique, cet outil me sera vraiment essentiel. De façon, par exemple, si je veux produire des données sur des enfants particulièrement, par exemple, quand je vais construire mon échantillon, je vais essayer d'abord de cibler aussi cette catégorie. Et par exemple, quand je fais une enquête, comme je vais citer l'exemple de l'enquête sur la migration que nous avons menée récemment, nous avons ciblé uniquement les migrants qui sont âgés de 15 ans et plus. Et donc on n'a pas touché les enfants de moins de 15 ans. On n'a pas pu atteindre. Dans notre échantillon, il ne s'agit que des enfants de plus de 15 ans. Donc, en ayant cet outil, je vais dire, voilà, j'ai besoin de cibler cette catégorie aussi. Également, quand il s'agira de construire mon questionnaire, j'ai la liste des indicateurs. Je vais dire, voilà, j'ai besoin d'informer ces indicateurs-là, de renseigner ces indicateurs, et par la suite, je vais construire mon questionnaire, mais je vais mettre en place des questions ou peut-être un module spécifique aux enfants en mouvement. Également aussi par rapport à l'analyse, on a souvent tendance à publier des indicateurs qui sont agrégés. Ce guideline va me permettre de désagréger les indicateurs, les données, de façon à avoir des indicateurs et des statistiques pertinents pour cette catégorie de population. Également par rapport à la question des stakeholders, comme vous savez que cette population, les enfants en mouvement, sont souvent invisibles à ces opérations dites traditionnelles. Également, les données administratives, parfois, ils sont invisibles à cette source de données également. Donc, il est très très important de travailler avec tous les acteurs qui sont impliqués qui travaillent ou qui sont proches de cette population, notamment les organisations internationales, la société civile. Nous pourrons et en tant que bureau, par exemple, de statistiques, nous pourrons collaborer avec ces partenaires-là pour collecter des informations pertinentes qui soient officielles, pourquoi pas. Et d'ailleurs, on en a discuté pas mal avec des partenaires ici présents, comme l'OIM, comment on peut travailler, collaborer avec la société civile, qui sont proches de ces populations-là, et avoir des données sur eux qui puissent être reconnues, officielles et utilisées de façon officielle pour des actions éthiques pour ces enfants-là. Voilà. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Karima. Je pense que effectivement, ces indicateurs sont clés pour mettre en pratique certaines des recommandations qu'on trouve dans le manuel ou ailleurs. C'est vraiment l'étape suivante. C'est aussi intéressant peut-être de rappeler que vous avez aussi fait partie du groupe sur les statistiques migration, sur les indicateurs, et que du coup, il y a une cohérence là qu'on est en train de créer entre IDAC et les recommandations statistiques internationales sur les statistiques migratoires. Tout ça se met un petit peu en musique au travers de vous, et donc merci beaucoup pour votre participation et votre contribution. Now turning to Diego Iturralde, 3 questions for you. So at what stage of a process are we in terms of the development of the guidelines? Is it inception? Is it drafting? Is it dissemination? You tell me all about that. What are the next steps following, and what are the plans within working group 2 for its dissemination, socialization, and hopefully adoption by the countries? Diego, over to you.
Super. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So the indicator guideline has been a fruit of labor between the members of working group 2, but in particular, I think I need to acknowledge the contribution of initially Jan Beiser before he left the HQ, and there's also Sebastian Palmas, who has been instrumental in guiding this entire process and keeping us on track. So the status of the indicators at the moment are that they are at a final draft version, and I think we have spoken a lot about them throughout this week and received a lot of good feedback in terms of how to take them forward. So these indicators have been identified by looking at various frameworks that are relevant for children around the world. We're looking at the 2 global compacts. We've been looking at the SDGs. We've been looking at the International Convention for the Rights of Children, as well as the OECD integration guidelines. All of these have relevance to children in one place or the other, in some of the indicators or others where relevant. So we have identified these and we have thematized them so that they come across to you not just as a shopping list of indicators, but we can make clear identification about what kind of themes is it that we are trying to address. We've also identified indicators as being core or additional. Which ones are the ones we really need to make an effort to produce, and which are the ones that are good to have. In terms of what is up next, I think the main thing going forward is about establishing a methodology guideline. So whereas we have worked on the what, we now want to work on the how. I think that will certainly be a main part of our work going ahead. And of course, we can't speak about the how unless we define many terms, unless we identify standards and concepts, which are all very key and central towards the production of statistics. Next March, the expert group in migration statistics will be presenting its final work around the framework, the conceptual framework, and related work on the recommendations of international migration statistics. And the work of IDAC, the indicators of IDAC are built into. So as the global community of chief statisticians endorses the new recommendations on migration statistics, they're indirectly endorsing the indicators around children on the move that we have identified. Furthermore, we want to look ahead towards implementation of these recommendations, as well as those around EGRIS, which focus on forced displacement. And of course, raise awareness around this through seminars and through further advocacy. In terms of how do we publicize this, how do we disseminate the indicator guidelines and ultimately the methodology guidelines as well? Well, we want to rely a lot on the IDAC mechanism. We want to rely on the regions. I think regional entities, country offices of UNICEF and of any other UN agency that has an interest in this have a role to play in advocating for this, also through capacity building and reaching out to stakeholders at a national level, which would include civil society. Back home, where I'm from in South Africa, we have what we call the National Migration and Urbanization Forum, and I can already see an opportunity to hold a special session on child migration or children on the move statistics where we can bring together relevant government departments, civil society, actors who would coordinate together in order to produce the statistics that are essential, produce data sources, and to get more feedback about what is necessary and what is important within the national context of children in the move in a country like South Africa. So I think that's how we stand.
Thank you very much, Diego. Let's move now to working group 3. It's on internal displacement, and Jasper Linker, you have the floor on that.
Thank you, and I'm very sorry that you're stuck with me because Christelle is going to the airport in a few minutes. Thanks. So I hope to represent our working group properly. So yeah, just in terms of the latest trends and data that we're asked to present, just want to highlight like 3 key trends or data. So as you heard in Christelle's presentation, like based on IDMC data, last year we had 32 million children internally displaced, and this represents around 42% of all IDPs. So I think this is one takeaway. The other one is that, of course, the number of IDPs generally is increasing every year, and also the number of displacements, the number of IDP children is also rising. And then especially displacements related to disasters is getting an increasing share of these displacements. So I think this just has to be kept in mind, like climate mobility as an increasing focus or increasing component of the data collected on IDP children. And then the third, it's not really a trend, but like a third focus of the data that exists on IDP children is that internal displacement has a lot of impacts, both direct and indirect, on children, of course. And we have to look at them holistically. And we also have to consider secondary effects. So a couple of speakers in one of the panels highlighted, for instance, the secondary effects of livelihoods. So we just have to be sensitive to those impacts as well. And of course, education having very long-term effects. Then in terms of the latest developments in this data space, in terms of methodologies and focus, so of course, there is an increasing focus on climate mobility, and for those of you who have been taken part of the COP conferences, I mean, this gets an increasing space in the discussions there. So I think we're all well advised to take part in that discussion and contribute data to this discussion and make sure that there's not just data on cross-border displacements, which is usually the focus, but also on internal displacement, which is, of course, the large part of displacements worldwide. Then we have also an increased focus or an interest in the overlaps between internal and cross-border displacement. And we already discussed with a couple of colleagues from different UN agencies and also with IDMC and impact initiatives, how we can better grasp these just through methodologies, these overlaps and these interlinkages of like people who are internally displaced and then for a couple of months or years go over the border and then come back, just to collect a bit more accurate data on this. Then there are different ways of how machine learning gains increasing interest or like focus in this work, in this space. And I just want to highlight 2 components there. One is for and nowcasting of displacements. So we heard Wild talking for Save the Children. And then I think IDMC is doing something similar as well, UNHCR, IOM. So I think a lot of organizations are working on this. And I think it will be great to collaborate on this from now on. And the second kind of stream in machine learning we're working on also on with impact initiatives is to use machine learning to improve our analysis on the impacts of internal displacement on children. And then we also have the integration of the increased integration of durable solutions, questions, and indicators. So there was, for instance, a collaboration between IUM and impact initiatives on making sure that these durable solution questions are included in humanitarian assessments, and there are similar initiatives. And of course, right now with the end of Piper's term, it's a bit the question what comes next. But I think we have never seen as much data being generated in this space. Then IDAC definitely plays a big role in adding value to this discussion, into this space. And I just want to highlight that it's definitely a space for sharing resources and data on IDPs, both among those collecting this data and those using this data. Then a space for sharing and discussing best practices. For having sessions on capacity building, so opportunities for capacity building, and promoting the values of age and sex disaggregation and measuring internal displacement. And then how working group 3 specifically can help tackle these challenges. So on one hand, we can help, or we want to focus on data expansion initiatives, so like to promote, to increase the number of countries that use age and sex disaggregated data on children and other standards and best practices that we have discussed. Then secondly, we would like to focus on the dissemination of findings. So through joint reports, through joint blogs and databases. And then thirdly, we would like to have webinars to focus on capacity building and resource sharing. And we're also discussing about having maybe a mailing list to ensure that resources are being shared among members. Thanks.
Thank you, Jasper. You did a great job, not only in replacing Christelle, who is still with us, but also in responding to the question that I forgot to ask you at the beginning. So great job about that. I can see that the word cooperation comes a lot in your intervention as well. You already hit a little bit into the data innovation. We'll go to that in a minute, but I think the fact of having a focus within IDAC on internally displaced people is great. It's not always the case, but the IDP and migration and forced displacement community are speaking together. I know it works very well between you and Asher and yourself, but and IDMC. But it's a great opportunity that we have here to better understand the connection between internal displacement and international mobility. So great work from this working group. Let's move now to the fourth working group, Manuel Garcia, and I have 3 questions for you. I won't forget to ask them this time. How do you think innovative data methods can address the challenge we are facing? And maybe some ideas were already mentioned, but I'm sure you're going to tell us more about that. What are some of the latest and effective innovation methods that are making a concrete difference in the life of children on the move? So really this impact question, can you give us some examples? And what are the activities planned in working group 4 to promote innovative methods and increase data availability? Over to you, Manuel.
Thanks a lot. And for the questions, they're tough questions, I would say. And first of all, I'd like to recall how happy I am that innovation is coming up in all these different groups. And I think that's one as Petro was putting it, maybe that's one of the added values of all those working groups, as we see the landscape changing so much and not so aligned with children on the move, actually, globally. So maybe I'm going to start with putting the second question to the actual group, right? Because that's kind of on the third one. Like, what are the, in the outputs of working group 4, some of the immediate things that we want to do over this year is try to build a compendium. Where are those areas where new data technologies can have more impact? Where is work already happening? What are the immediate steps that what is the landscape of these new data technologies in an impact for children? And the answer is, I don't know. And that's where I have a particular vision. It's part of the equation. And that's a little bit of a call to the group on asking you, who else do we have to talk to from this group, within your organizations, outside this group? How can we better connect to them and gather all those stories so that we can build better that compendium? Along with that, we're trying to build a larger understanding of the issues, and that will be translated in 2025 in a series of webinars also, in which we are trying to invite and bridge the gap between applications in the field and research that is happening out there, trying to identify and close those gaps. So that's a little bit putting back this question number 2 into the group. An example where I've seen that impact, that's a very difficult question, because measuring impact is quite tough, but I'm gonna say, referring to the messy meadow, which is something that I really liked, probably the biggest impact I've seen for these technologies, and the one that summarizes better what I believe is the path to go, is on Ukraine. And the work that we did in Ukraine, UNICEF, UNHCR, was on geospatial analytics. Let me put in there. It was recognized by the Secretary General to UNICEF itself, thanking for the work that was done in there. And I think it put a good emphasis on a bunch of innovations that were happening in that space. Viviana was talking this morning about the work on using Facebook data. That's work that started in 2017, UNICEF with an academic from Qatar Research Institute of Computing. How can we use Facebook's advertising API, so that's not the data for good, for estimating how many Venezuelans were displaced in what place. And the results were good. They're published out there. They were not used at the end because there was a change in government right before that was done, and a change in rep at UNICEF, and it's not the best way to start a relationship, new rep, new government. So that work stayed dormant in there. Ukraine come in. The researcher that had been working with us had been continuing that work, and then it was a different researcher from Oxford University that continued that work with UNHCR and IOM. And the methods were slightly better refined, better measures for children, still very static, but suddenly that became one data layer that came into the geospatial response for Ukraine. It was one of the 80 dynamic layers that were able to be put in there. Some of them were also using AI for damage assessment on what schools have been damaged, wash infrastructure. All those different layers together are the ones that actually made a difference. So I think that's very important component. I think that the place where I've seen these technologies be more useful and have more impact is those where the situation is already messy. And that's where they're more used to treat data as one more data point. It's not the truth, it's not sound, but it's something that might help me understand better where might be populations displaced, that they don't have water, or that the schools have been damaged in there. And that goes a little bit to your question number 1, which is how do we make these technologies work? And I think a lot of that is on community building. So the fact that we build that community with academia in a pilot that tried to go beyond a pilot back in 2017 with the Venezuelan space, and that we curated that space, that's the one that enables another sister organization to take advantage of that, and then went in 2023 and apply that for Ukraine. So I think Petro was talking about the data ecosystem, enlarging the data ecosystem so that we are able to include network science community, the complex systems community, the artificial intelligence community. That's not easy because our problem definitions are not their problem definitions. How can we curate a little bit better relationships, better problem definitions, better data sets that are not designed to feed our needs? They are designed to create that bond with a different community, right? A lot of that means building internal capacity. That in our case was the geospatial capacity, so that when Ukraine crisis happened, we had a geospatial unit and we could second in that moment a person from the data unit on the geospatial to emergency operations. It became their capacity. And a lot has to do with partnerships, having those ready and curate over time. So that are kind of like the basic ingredients. And within that internal capacity, I think all around we are seeing the value of, and the important need of basic digitalization. We can't jump into AI if we don't have places where data lives in a machine-ready format, like beginning to think of data as something that needs to be consumed by algorithms, that needs to be consumed by apps. So that's really important. I think that the value might be immense if we're able to navigate that messy meadow. There are challenges or opportunities for more real time, more granularity, early warnings where we're exploring and seeing with many people around here, forecasting, mapping, and especially in complex ecosystems like climate change, disasters and conflict, where it's not just the data about migration, but there is a lot of other things in the back that already take advantage of computational analysis, geospatial techniques, and other data layers. So I think the key question is, how do we map a little bit more the landscape? What are the data sets that we can generate, not for our consumption, but trying to think on for others to consume? And maybe that's some of the areas where we can craft some space into the data gateway, for example, to not just think on what is the view for children, but what are those basic resources that can trigger some of these big data analytics be more children-centric. So we can become a little bit that missing link between what work on children on the move is and what these news communities need to focus their attention on our problems. So the most important thing is question number 2, go back to you. Who should we be connecting to from your organizations, from this group, outside? We're really looking forward to hear from you. Examples that excite you. You were mentioning a bunch of those. How can we capture those better? And that might be a good starting point for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. So before we move on to the Q&A, and I'm conscious of time, we'll catch up a little bit of the 30 minutes delay we started with, but we'll still go over under the control of Jibilson if we can by a few minutes. I just want to share also with the group what the Secretariat, in addition to the working group, is planning to do. And please, colleagues from the Secretariat, if I forget anything, if you want to add, please don't hesitate to jump in. So first of all, IDAC will be implementing a number of case studies. We call them IDAs, in Kenya, Nigeria, and Indonesia. And we'll use these case studies to provide data system strengthening support to national statistical systems. So if more countries are interested, obviously taking into account the resource constraint, we'll be very happy to engage with more countries in this very, let's say, deep dive country-specific work. IDAC will also is creating a data gateway. You've heard about it during the World Cafe yesterday, and also a little bit this morning, to bring together and visualize all relevant data from partners on children on the move, which means actually that don't hesitate to share, send us link data. We'll be happy to add that to the data gateway. We'll continue investing in producing some guidance material. We've heard about the indicators from World Group 2. We've heard from World Group 1 about the guidelines. We'll continue building the necessary blocks so that all the implementation can take place, improving harmonization, as it was said by Kyriaki in her first intervention. Third, we will continue to raise awareness and promote more and better data for children on the move through multiple ways: publication, events, communication. maybe I can already announce to the group that we are planning, and is still in discussion with the Secretariat, to organize a data challenge for the next IFMS, the International Forum on Migration Statistics. You'll please keep be aware about the upcoming information about that. But we will make some data available to the global community and invite everybody to try to make the most of this data for identifying new issues on children on the move, and we'll give a prize during the next International Forum on Migration and Statistics that is jointly organized by OECD, UNDESA, and IOM, with partner organizations, including UNHCR and others here. So that's one way for us to also raise awareness and promote this work. IDAC will continue to expand and invest more in achieving these three objectives, to strengthen national data system and capacity. Second, to promote and establish collaborative, innovative methods for child-specific data work. We've just heard about that. And third, to improve data visibility, availability, accessibility, usability, among other objectives. So please continue to work with us on that through a working group with the Secretariat. Join the advisory board if you are interested too. And with that long introduction about reviewing the mission of IDAC, which was the theme of that session. So let me open the floor for questions, remarks, comments from the floor for a few minutes, if you want to say anything regarding all what was presented to you right now. Any comment? Yes, please. Do we have a mic? Okay. I'm running.
Thanks. It's a very simple question. Sorry about the mic. How do we contribute to the data gateway? What type of data do you want, and how do we share it with you?
Any other questions? No other questions? Okay, very quiet room. Well, I don't know, colleagues from UNICEF, do you want to respond to that? I think, as you can see, IDAC mandate is very broad. And so whatever data you have, we'll be happy to point it to. And I think we basically, I mean, quality is the issue. So we want to make sure that anything we post on the website is quality certified in a way, that this is good and relevant data. But in terms of the content itself, IDAC has a broad mandate, and we're happy to share whatever you can bring to the table. But maybe some UNICEF colleague would also to answer to that. A question here.
A quick question. Thank you very much. I'm the representative of UNHCR in Morocco, and previously the MENA Deputy Director overseeing the establishment of the Syria refugee response. I was wondering, we talked a lot about, the national level, but mobility, mixed mobility environment speaks to much broader regional embraces here in Africa, and that would be North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. So to what extent does this absolutely need to have also an embrace in terms of data collection and analysis over broader geographical spaces, much broader than a national one? I'm wondering where it sits. I appreciate IDAC is not very old, but it's absolutely essential. So would be very interested to hear from you in this respect.
Thank you. Any other question? No, not yet, but who would like to take this one? Diego, I'm sure it's for you. National Statistic Office. Yeah, that's your role.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think that mobility, as indicated, does not respect national borders. Mobility occurs from a particular point of origin to a destination as and when it needs to. So I think in line with what I said about regional cooperation and reaching out to stakeholders at the regional level, that there's a need to be able to coordinate these efforts that we are highlighting at a national level across countries within a particular region. I think that kind of harmonization of data collection efforts, of data conceptualization, of reporting, analysis, and most importantly, dissemination. I can't emphasize that enough, that very often we make such efforts to collect data and to put together data products and nice reports, but there are always cases where some countries or some organizations leave the dissemination behind to other processes, and the dissemination is really as important as any other phase. So I think that using maybe champion countries in a particular region and then expanding those experiences and those best practices into a particular region that have certain characteristics in common could be a way to regionalize these efforts.
Karima.
Oui, merci Diego. Justement, je voulais réagir par rapport à ce point-là. Et en tant que pays champion sur la question migratoire, j'imagine déjà que notre rôle pourrait de renforcer justement les synergies entre cette initiative qui est l'IDAC et par exemple le travail que fait l'Observatoire africain sur les migrations, et juste avec l'appui des agences onusiennes, notamment l'UNHCR, l'UNICEF, l'OIM, et on pourrait réfléchir en ce qui concerne la diffusion des produits de l'IDAC, notamment le working group, le guideline que nous sommes en train de développer au sein de working group 2. Il y a aussi le travail qui se fait sur les enfants déplacés internes, qui est une thématique qui concerne particulièrement des pays africains, l'utilisation de méthodes innovatives, le travail du working group 4. En tout cas, il y a pas mal de choses à faire, et nous, on est en tant que Maroc et en tant que membre de cette initiative et qui accueillons l'Observatoire africain, je pense que nous avons un rôle très très important à jouer en la matière. Merci beaucoup.
Manuel, you wanted to, and then Petra, yes.
Yeah, this one's work. Yeah, just one comment on that, because that's we're just starting a use case actually on early warning systems with our LAC regional office, and the importance of that sort of regional analysis. A lot of the drivers they are not contained within the boundaries of a country, right? So if you're to think on modeling, on scenario analysis, on climate change, some of the elements for new data technologies to be applied in here, they require that you go with some basic multinational understanding, right? And many times these crises and the data that you need in order to get a solution for one particular country requires the whole region to work somehow together. And in there, again, you have a basic digitalization effort. When you're talking, just to put this example on foresight early warning, different triggers, how would that end up in a race of movements in one place or in another? Is there a way to get a better understanding of things as they are happening? A trigger can be a change on legislation or regulations, or a trigger can be socioeconomic push. If you want to do that scenario analysis, you need to combine data. Where are the flows going in Latin America, for example? Where are the volumes of the displaced populations in different countries? And that data normally lives in different governments. They each have their own websites, they all make it open in a different way, right? And that sort of homogenization, basic digitalization is critical if you want to take a notch up and say, what about satellite image and to monitor blackouts, for example, as a trigger? So the triggers you can define later, but you need some kind of basic modeling digitalization efforts on the back, and that are rarely just the result of one single country. So I think we need to think regionally and maybe putting a little bit more capacity at a regional level to help us, homogenize, assess, coordinate some basic ingredients for new data technologies.
Very much. Last word on this panel to Petra.
Thanks, you. So I'm going to answer with my hat as a regional entity. And I won't repeat what has been said already, but I completely agree that having these kind of international definitions harmonization is really helpful in giving us a mandate and allowing us to have then comparable data and statistics. At least it helps along the way when there is this agreement through the different intergovernmental processes. I think regionally as well, we can work to have regional commitments which can help with countries supporting one another or putting pressure on one another depending on the different entities involved to actually deliver on certain commitments. In ESCAP, we are the Secretariat for the CRVS Asia Pacific Decade, which includes ministerial declarations and commitments on CRVS. So, for example, this includes registering all migrants and stateless people within a country. So having countries sign up to that commitment and having them publicly make these commitments allows us then to work with the countries which might be less willing to do so. So it gives us a very strong advocacy point, and also allows us to work as a regional entity to move everyone towards the same goal. So I think that's also really helpful. I'll also say this also highlights the need for a very strong link with policy. In statistics and data, you can only go so far. But you need countries, for example, to sign up to the Refugee Convention or to sign up to the anti-statelessness conventions, and that allows us then to also work with them on their reporting and improving the data and statistics. But that's where we need the policy people involved, because we can only go so far. So, in our region, there are countries, for example, which refuse to recognize refugees, which will cause, refugees, say undocumented immigrants, because they haven't signed up to the Refugee Convention. So they don't have that legal framework to address this issue. And then, we can only take it so far if we don't have that policy input. So I think your question also highlights just how important it is for data and policy to be strongly interlinked.
Well, with that, let me thank all the panelists. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next session. Thank you.